Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? It's 2015, but I finally got around to watching the 2011 remake of the movie Conan the Barbarian. It was not stellar, but then again, neither was the original. But it is what it is. But in the movie, there was a spell cast by one of these sorcerers, and it reminded me of a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while because it's something that really kind of interested me ever since I saw James Raggi put in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. He inserted the old illusionist spell Shadow Monsters rather than putting in something like Monster Summoning. Classic D&D really doesn't have either, as far as I recall. But in the movie, what happened was at some point, our hero Conan is in a desert area. Imagine that in a Conan movie. And the evil sorceress picks up a bunch of sand and she casts a spell, blows on or whatever. And these man-like figures emerge out of the sand, and they're made of sand. And every time Conan hits one, it kind of crumbles into dust, and a new guy pops up. And sometimes there's two or three fighting him, and sometimes there's just one. Every time he hits it, another guy comes up, and he wins in the end. I think something happened, whatever it was. But I liked, that reminded me of the spell Shadow Monsters, which I really like. I'm not a big fan of the summon monster spells from first edition and later games because they seem a little bit overpowered and bizarre. Because essentially what you're able to do is, in my mind, is you're gating and charming a bunch of monsters to fight on your behalf, and they'll show up within 10 minutes and fight to the death on your behalf. That doesn't sound very realistic to me. Not that I'm looking for realism in D&D, but that kind of it's less realistic than a fireball. Let's put it that way. But in the Shadow Monsters spells, if you're not familiar with, and they're renamed, I think, in Pathfinder third edition, all that sort of stuff. And I really like the version of the spells in this game, Wizard's World, from 1983. It's a game I'll have to talk about sometime. I never actually play it, but it's got some really cool spells. They have the most unimaginative spell list ever in terms of names. The spells are called Improved Illusion 1, Improved Illusion 2, and Improved Illusion 3. And if you're not familiar with that whole Shadow Monsters thing, what the wizard's doing is he's creating semi-real monsters. And sometimes, depending on the description of the spell, he has to have seen him before. Sometimes he just makes them up on the fly. I like that kind of making up on the fly because, when I watch the Conan movie, I'm thinking, well, that's what Shadow Monsters looks like. These things are kind of real, but not really. And then the deal with those, if you're not familiar with it, is if you somehow manage to make an intelligence check, generally you roll under your intelligence on D20 or 3D6. Sometimes you do a will save in some of the other games. Then what happens is the armor class of these monsters is less than it normally would be, and their damage is only a fraction of what it would be. Depends on the thing. I mean, in the Wizard's World version, which is the one I actually like the best, the lesser spell gives them 25% damage, and then they get 50% damage at the higher spell, and then 75% damage. And that game actually has a spell called Create Monster, where you're actually really kind of making a real monster. Only lasts for a while, but I like that kind of as a capstone version of that spell. And if you don't successfully disbelieve this stuff, well, then their armor class is normal and their damage is normal. In any event, whether you make that intelligence check or not, the lesser versions of the spell, they only have like a fraction. Like melee only have 2 hit points per hit die. And then later on, they would have 4 or 6. And I suppose in Create Monster, they have full hit points. Hooray! They're badass. But I really dig that type of spell. I'm not a big summon monster guy, but I think it's kind of underused. I really, that movie just kind of reminded me of what for me, like what wizards should be like. They should be doing stuff like that. So I like having spells like that in the game. So. I'm playing basic D&D or OD&D, something like in between there. But I'm gonna put those spells in there. I'll probably put the Wizard's World version of them because I like those the best. But that to me is really wizardy. That's cool, and I enjoy the fact that sometimes they might just come out of the sand. I really kind of dug that motif rather than they're just these shadowy things and they're illusions. I like the idea that these maybe Conan believed in them, maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter. That to me is more like the fluff of what they should look like. Yeah, Shadow Monsters, cool spells.